news and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I am your host, Harry Wilkinson, and this is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the news, happenings internationally, happenings in technology, environment, entertainment, everything that we hear about, interact with, or even think about during our week as we are exposed to increasingly greater amounts of information via our new and improving technology, whether it be our cell phones, whether it be from social media, whether it be from 24-hour news cycles, or even just the old-fashioned radio in the car on your way to work. We are often bombarded with information that we either don't know what to do with, or is downright upsetting or worrying, or somehow triggering in one way or another. And I talk about this generally at the top of the show. Certainly I've talked about the role that media plays and media gatekeepers play in choosing not only what kinds of stories to tell, what kinds of news information to offer, but how it is offered. And it is generally offered in the most, prurient, I think is probably a good word. Or, put it this way, it's presented in a way that will get the most attention and grab the most eyeballs or ears, because everything depends on that. Ratings, the number of eyeballs, the number of ears glued to the news programming, because that allows news programmers to make money by charging higher rates for advertising. That's basically how it works. So, quite often, what they will do is find the most, flamboyant way of telling a story so that it gets people's attention. And quite often these things are triggering, as I mentioned, how they often trigger our stress responses without us really knowing that that's how we're feeling. But when you hear a news story that's disturbing or emotional, maybe sad or even scary, that triggers a stress response. Even though we're not aware of it, even though it may not actually be happening to us, if it's upsetting to us, that triggers our stress response. And as you probably know if you've been listening, or if you've read about it elsewhere, stress response causes the body to kind of fold in upon itself, to shut down to a degree, so that all of your energy is going towards the fight or flight response, because the body considers what's going on an emergency. And at that point, your immune system becomes weaker because all of the energy is going towards that. So in order to counter that, you need to have a relaxation response. The relaxation response causes the body to relax, undoes that stress response, and allows the immune system to be more effective. Just in a nutshell. I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit this year on this show, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but basically that's it. So one of the tools we have towards counteracting what comes at us through varying forms of communication is to, rather than blocking out or trying to disconnect, going into the stories, going into what upsets us the most, feeling that, and then recognizing the truth. what is happening around us. While it looks scary, it looks like it's coming from out of nowhere. It may even feel like it's attacking. It is truly our creation. And here's where it gets metaphysical. And some people have a difficult time with this, and I apologize in advance, but this is my perspective on this show. A metaphysical perspective. We, at the highest level of our beings, which is beyond our physical being, something I call divine mind, because I don't want to get into debates about whether there's a soul or what not, but we do know that just energetically, if you want to look at it from a pure scientific standpoint, energetically we do exist outside our physical bodies. And since I am inclined towards the metaphysical point of view, at that highest level we are creating everything we experience in this human experience, if you will. And you can liken it to, as I always do, a virtual reality game in which everything feels very real. The details are extraordinary. I mean, it's the most extraordinary. I mean, virtual technology is nowhere near what we do on a daily basis. Eventually, I think it probably will catch up, but we've created this virtual situation or a game or however you'd like to phrase it, and it feels real. It feels like this is truth, but it's not. It's a creation of ours so that we can have these experiences. It's a creation of divine mind, which is all of our divine minds connected. And so when we realize that, it's very empowering. You begin to take your energy back from situations that may be causing you some distress, and you look at what you gain, or the connectedness that going into those feelings creates. You look at the broader perspective. How many times have I felt this? How many times have I been through this? And how have I gotten through this? And what did those times do for me? How did I grow? How am I different now from the other times I've gone through something similar or had these kinds of feelings? And that is the empowering thing. When we recognize the truth of who and what we are, this divine mind that I talk about, that's the truth of who we are. Everything else is one form or another of a creation. That's not to say that it invalidates the feelings and all of the activities around it, but when we understand how that can change and how we can be in control of changing that, it feels more empowering. And I do believe it's a wellness technique. That's why I include wellness in the title of this show, because I believe it is a wellness technique as we more and more find ourselves in toxic environments, not only physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well. We need to understand the techniques that help us move through that. And that's what this show is really all about, and has been for the past 6 years. Today is our final show of 2018, so this is a wrap-up show of sorts. Part 2. Last week we looked at the early part of the year and looked at some of the more popular episodes that I did that people really seemed to respond to and had either questions about or comments about or thoughts about or just appreciated. So I'm going to continue with that. We're going to talk about really two. We talked about an awful lot. We spent most of our months, last month, September through now, talking about the rise of the mystic scientists, the work that's being done on a scientific level regarding mushrooms and psilocybin and other psychedelics, which they are finding are incredibly healing tools for people who have, severe illnesses, stress disorders, but also for just people who aren't, but need to feel or need help in feeling more connected, more of a spiritual sense. And so that's been a fascinating journey, and it's something I think that I will probably be continuing when we pick up again in 2019, because there's so much more going on, and there's so much more to look at and talk about, and I want to dive into all aspects of it, because the uniqueness of this show is that we can give more time to things like that. Most other shows, while this topic has been brought up and talked about a bit, and maybe gotten, if you're lucky, maybe gotten a 10-minute panel discussion from so-called experts, really diving into some of this research, I think, is fascinating. So beyond into 2019, I think that you can expect to hear more about that. But we're going backwards now to review the things we did talk about in 2018, and also, if we have some time, I'll throw in some holiday tips about things to add to your foods and your experience, and things you might want to stay away from. So, in looking back over the year, there were two very popular or very popular episodes that we did that seemed to resonate with a lot of people. One is one that, in all the years I've done this show, is usually among the more popular topics, which is trends, future trends, where we're going. That always gets a lot of people interested. But the other very popular episode that we talked about, we did, I think, 2 parts on this, happened to be about life transitions. And it's very powerful and gratifying to me that meant something to a lot of people, because quite frankly, at the time that I did those episodes, I was going through a major life transition. I would say sort of a minor major life transition in having to move to a new location, and at the same time having to adapt to leaving a job while actually still trying to recover from the loss of another job that I had for years. And these changes were all unexpected. And that can make, changes are challenging to begin with. If you are graduating from school and getting ready to take that next step, or you're either into, college life, or if you're graduating from college into the workforce, or wherever your life is about to take you. If you are getting ready on the other end of the spectrum to retire, and your life is going to change quite a bit. If you're getting married, or you have your first child on the way. These are all, life transitions, and that's what we talked about. And some of them are desired and expected, but quite frankly, usually the most